Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
There will be a brief ad at the end of the video. Now, this topic is one that's been pitched to me by more people than probably any other story I've seen this year. And it involves HOAs, homeowners associations. And we talk about them quite a bit here, and they're not popular. Amazing. Now, occasionally, to be honest, some people do say, hey, Steve, I like my HOA. It's run well. But the ones that get people ticked off, there's a lot of those. So a Florida lawmaker has pitched the idea of abolishing HOAs. He calls them a failed experiment. And the question is, could he really do that, or could the legislature do that? Let's suppose that the legislators and lawmakers and everybody in Florida got together and said, let's pass a law. HOAs are hereby illegal. Well, there'd be a bunch of difficult issues to deal with there. Going forward, not so much, but looking at the ones that already exist, what do you do about them? So I think there actually is a potential solution, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, this story is from Realtor.com. Alaire Conte wrote this. Across the country, frustrations with HOAs bubbling over. But in Florida, it's reaching a boiling point. Steep fees, strict rules, and heavy-handed enforcement have left many residents feeling trapped in the neighborhoods they no longer control. The consequences, of course, can be severe. Earlier this year, a woman in Hillsborough County, Florida, spent a week in jail after failing to bring her lawn up to par. Another woman who lives in the same neighborhood faced foreclosure after a lawsuit over the exterior color of her home. Stories like these have become symbols of what critics call HOA overreach, and now a South Florida lawmaker says it's time to get rid of them. A state rep has proposed abolishing HOAs in Florida outright, calling them a failed experiment. And by the way, those examples, which sound extreme, are actually quite common for things that can get you in trouble. Many HOAs do control the color you can paint your house. They control what your lawn looks like. I've heard of them before where they control the color of the drapes inside your house if they can be seen through the windows from the outside. So they can come by and say, the drapes in your living room are the wrong color. You need to change those because we can see them from out here. And that's in the rules of the HOA. So if successful, this rep's plan would fundamentally reshape daily life for nearly 9.5 million people in Florida who currently live under an HOA. Homeowners associations are popular everywhere. In 2024, more than 40% of real estate listings mention an HOA fee, which is up from 39% the year before. So it's climbing slowly. Across the country, there's about 374,000 community associations governing everything from subdivisions to high-rise condos. And that's a huge jump from 1970 when there were just 10,000. So Florida stands near the top of the list, second only to California in total HOAs, largely because of the boom of new construction. New homes are far more likely than older ones to be built within HOA-governed communities. In recent decades, developers have leaned heavily on the model. Now, Florida has been one of the fastest growing states for new housing. The trend has accelerated there. Last year, Florida accounted for nearly 12% of all new construction permits nationwide. And so the national median HOA fee per month is $143. However, in Edwards, Colorado, the median monthly HOA due comes to a whopping $525. I used to jokingly tell people that living in a condo is the worst of both worlds because the condo looked like an apartment but had you making payments as if you were buying a home, but also paying the HOA fee, which felt like rent. And so in Florida, condo owners have been hit especially hard with rising fees, in large part because of assessments triggered by the reforms after the 2021 collapse of the Champlain Towers South condo. Those rising bills prompted the governor to sign legislation that increases transparency in fees, but it didn't address single-family HOAs. So the question is, can this happen? So the representative who's talking about this has not said how he's going to do it. He has not yet introduced an actual bill, and he's working through logistical challenges of crafting a law that would speak to the wide array of HOA-governed properties. Condominiums, for example, share walls, roofs, and common spaces, which would almost certainly require a separate framework. But this man's suggesting that single-family HOAs, where boards oversee rules about lawns, paint colors, parking, may be less essential and easier to unwind. And even if public anger is surging, dismantling them, referring to the HOAs, would be a Herculean task. More than 50,000 HOA contracts don't simply vanish with the passage of a law. Now, there have been times where they passed laws that got rid of old contracts, but generally speaking, it's harder to do. And the HOA industry itself wields significant influence in Tallahassee. Management companies, law firms, and trade associations have long defended HOAs as critical to preserving property values and providing services local governments can't or won't cover. And so there's a lot of stuff going on here. And so if HOAs were abolished, the changes for homeowners would be immediate and dramatic. The dues would disappear, freeing up your money, but the savings may come at a cost because there'd be no centralized management. Services like landscaping, pool maintenance, or neighborhood security could fall by the wayside. And that's the biggest issue, is if you have an HOA that controls some common property that's standalone, like a clubhouse or a pool or pickleball courts or whatever it might be. Because if you say we're doing away with the HOA, well, who's going to pay to maintain this stuff? Someone's got to. And so I think that the key to this, if you really want to have some reform in the world of HOAs, what you do instead, because it'd be very, very difficult to just wave a magic wand legally and make them go away. What would be easier and make more sense would be to introduce some form of HOA Bill of Rights. And you say, you can have an HOA in this state, but every member of an HOA has the following rights, whether or not they're written into your HOA agreement. And then you create the Bill of Rights that lays out the things that the HOAs are allowed to do and are not allowed to do. And the primary thing that I hear complaints about is the process by which people get in trouble. So let's suppose you live in someplace and you paint your front door the wrong color. Okay? Now, that ain't the crime of the century, but if there is a rule in the HOA bylaws that says you cannot paint your front door without getting approval from us to make sure it's the right color palette, how do they handle that violation? And in some places, they'll send you a letter, and then they'll assess a fine, and the fine can be, $50 a day. And so by the time you get the letter, you're already into them for $500, depending on the mail. But these fines add up. And the question then becomes, once the fine gets too large and there's a dispute going on, what happens to resolve that dispute? Well, usually a person can go appear in front of the board and appeal their case, but they are then, in essence, appealing their case to the people who are telling them they're wrong. So can you imagine, instead of filing a lawsuit against somebody and having a court decide, you file a lawsuit against somebody and they get to decide? So there ought to be some process that looks fair, where somebody who says, I disagree with this, I don't think I've broken this rule, or I think such and such. There should be a process that appears to be fair. And then the question is it fair to say that your door is the wrong color, you owe us $50 a day until you paint it the correct color? And so now you're faced with, it's $50 a day, and I don't get a hearing for a couple of weeks in front of the group that's going to shoot me down because it's the same group saying I broke the rules. Is that fair? So somebody, and it'd take a group of people, a committee, and let's face it, this isn't going to be easy, but some people could sit down and go, okay, here's what due process would look like for people in an HOA. Here is how you would get a correct and fair hearing. And it might be a matter of you get a jury of other members of the HOA who are not on the board. That might not be a bad way to look at that. That's one way. Number two, if you say I'm in non-compliance and it's $50 a day, the second I dispute that should freeze the fines. And we've heard these stories before where somebody gets in a fight with their HOA, they lose, they file a lawsuit, works with the courts, and 3 years later, they lose, and a judge goes, well, it's $50 a day. Times 365, times how many years was this, times... Is that fair? Is that fair? And I understand, and I've mentioned before, I was on a condo board. I lived in a condo association. I'm intimately familiar with how these things work. And I'm here to tell you that there are misunderstandings. There are people who know that they live in a condo or an HOA, but didn't understand or realize that the rules say you can't repaint your front door without our permission. And even though I knew these rules, I had people appear before us and go, I didn't know that was a rule. And we'd say, it's a rule, sorry. But the board I was on, we weren't crazy about finding people because they were our neighbors. A door that got repainted is 4 doors down from me. I knew the people. I wasn't home when they repainted the door, otherwise I would have told them. I'd say, by the way, have you talked to the board about that? Because they would have said no, and I'd say, I know, because I'm on the board. But those kinds of things happen. So what they need to do is get together and create a bunch of rules, a framework for what due process would look like, and then say, for an HOA to be legal in this state, new ones or old ones, they must incorporate these rules, this Bill of Rights, into their bylaws and follow them. And so I think the two most important things are who hears the complaint or the objection. Is it heard by the board that issued the ruling, or is it heard by somebody else? And the second one is, do the fees and fines continue to stack up on a daily basis while it's being worked out? That to me also seems to be a problem. I'm sure there are more, and I'm sure people can come up with more, but those are the two we always hear about. But the other thing I have to remind people is that the bylaws, which are part of your deed, when you bought your house, you should have gotten a copy of them. And in some states like Michigan, they're required to tell you, yes, you are joining an HOA, just to let you know there's a disclosure that says that. Your bylaws can be amended. And so there's usually a process for that, but it'll say something like, 2/3 of the homeowners vote, you can rewrite the bylaws. And so what you can do, and the numbers are going to change from place to place. So there was a couple stories I've seen where somebody got in trouble for parking a truck in their driveway. Trucks are quite popular in America. And so the definition of what kind of truck is allowed or not allowed in the driveway becomes a big problem, because some of these rules may have been written 30 years ago when big trucks were not so popular. And so if you've got a big truck and you get fined for that, and they start finding you every day you park it in your driveway, so you have to go park your truck someplace else, you might want to consider looking into what it would take to change the rules on that and get the rule changed. But that's another story. This guy wants to end HOAs entirely. Whether he can do that or not, I don't know. Next best thing, pass an HOA Bill of Rights. So Alaire Conte wrote that for Realtor.com. This is happening in Florida. Across the country, people are frustrated, but in Florida, a lawmaker wants to abolish HOAs. He calls them a failed experiment. The question is, could he actually do that? Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye. I told you at the top there'd be an ad at the end of the video. Here we are. I'm here to talk to you about Factor. I've talked to you about them before, and I love Factor. Factor, of course, can simplify your life and help you eat better because they provide meals that are fresh, never frozen, and they're easy to make, and they send them right to you. And so, like I always do, while we're talking, down in this corner here, I'm going to show you me opening the most recent box and grabbing a meal, throwing it in the microwave. 2 minutes later, I'll pull it out, ready to eat, all in the time while I'm talking to you about how great the service is. And of course, summer's ending. I hate to admit it, but it's ending. Fall is here. Winter's right around the corner. The snow is going to fly pretty soon. So a lot of people like myself have got a list of things to do because we're wrapping up our summer. So I find myself actually with a to-do list, and I have less time to do that stuff and not enough time to do things like eat properly. So I like Factor because it makes that part of my life so much easier. When I'm running around with a lot to do, I find myself not doing the things like eating properly. So Factor solves that problem for me. So first of all, they help you if you live an active and healthy lifestyle because it can be overwhelming trying to go, oh, by the way, I need to eat better while I'm doing this. But the cool thing is that these meals are good. They're actually really, really good. And they only take 2 minutes to prepare, which is crazy. But that's because they've got chefs who actually put a ton of work into figuring out what's going to work best in this situation. But also, Factor's been around a little bit. Factor is now expanding their menu. And here's the thing. I actually just tell them to send me whatever you want. Just give me the variety. I like surprises when it comes to good food, okay? But they have, just to make sure that you can find something you like, they've doubled the size of their menu. They've got more than 80 rotating weekly meals to choose from. So you can go to the site, check them out, and go, oh, okay, here's what I want to order. And you can custom order what you want from their menu. They have 3 times as many new weekly meals than before with chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals. They have twice as many seafood meals than before, twice as many high-protein meals, and they're introducing a new meal customization option that allows you to select proteins to be swapped at no additional cost. So, for example, if you love chicken but don't care for the pork chops, you can do that out and swap them for free, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to let you know right now, the box I'm opening on camera contained these 6 meals, and they were good because I've already eaten them. This video in the corner wasn't shot today, okay? Shredded chicken and spinach pesto tortellini. It's a nice mix. Jalapeno lime cheddar chicken. Shredded chicken taco bowl. Cheesy garden herb chicken, potato leek mash and grilled chicken, and pot roast shredded beef and mash. And so because you watch my channel and my videos here on YouTube, you can head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code Lehto's Law FB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code Lehto's Law FB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. And that's offer only valid for new Factor customers with a code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. So you can check all that out. But what's amazing is how much work and effort they put into making these delicious meals and then how good they are. And I'm going to tell you right now, I do occasionally have to eat by myself because of my work schedule. And so there were times where I'm lazy. I was going to try to tap dance around that. But no, I'm lazy. And it's simply a matter of how much time have I got? How many jobs do I have to do? And then I prioritize, and I wind up deprioritizing my lunch or my dinner because I've just got so much other stuff to do. So if you're like me, you're going to love Factor. And I've spoken to so many people. I've now been working with Factor for a year or two. And overwhelmingly, the feedback I get is, Steve, I'm a lot like you. Don't have time to eat properly. Can't imagine going to a cookbook and looking up the recipe for potato leek mash and grilled chicken, trying to buy all those ingredients and then making it and then cleaning up afterwards. And that's the choice, that or 2 minutes with Factor. Yeah, I'll go with the Factor. And that's what I hear overwhelmingly from people who said, Steve, I've seen you talk about them. I decided to try them, and I'm happy with them. So they're also doing all kinds of other neat stuff. They're adding more exciting flavors to the menu so you can enjoy nutritious meals without compromising on flavor. So they're expanding their global cuisines with the launch of new Asian and Mediterranean cuisine meals with 30-plus options for global cuisine meals now. So check that out. Like I said, you can just go to the website and just take a look at the stuff and poke around and see what you like. And that's one of the things I've had people tell me. They say, well, Steve, I heard you rattle off some of these, meals that you had, and you're talking a little bit about it. But I went to the website and I saw, oh my gosh, look at all this variety. It's a huge variety, and you can't beat the simplicity of it. The box shows up. Bring the box inside, slice it open, pull one out, throw it in the microwave for 2 minutes after poking holes in the plastic. Put the rest in the fridge, put the box outside, and as you walk in, ding, dinner's ready or lunch is ready. You cannot beat that. So I love Factor. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code Lehto's Law FB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code Lehto's Law FB50. I'll put it on the screen at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. And that's an offer only valid for new Factor customers with the code and a qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. So please visit the website, check them out, and you'll find that if you're like me, Factor was a solution to a problem that I lived with all my life until I discovered them. Thank you very much. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I don't know about the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everybody.